welcome back to the Hangin' With Web Show. I'm GW Pomichter. That's right. You are watching the Hangin' With Web Show right here on HWWS WebTV. And we are at Authors for Authors this weekend. We are back at it. Thank goodness. Thank you to all of you who have supported the channel. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you click the little notification bell. Get notified. We have got interviews with authors, artists, filmmakers, musicians, creative minds of all kinds here on the Hangin' With Web Show. And we are here today, and we are hanging with Robert Gabordi, the author of The Truth. He literally authored The Truth. So if you know people who are telling you that they are telling you the truth, they owe him a nickel, at least, because he worked hard to author The Truth. Robert, how are you, man?
I'm good.
All right, good deal. So let's start with the obvious. Welcome back to the circuit, right?
Yeah.
It's been a couple of months here. How you been? How you been?
Good. I've been
Yeah?
good. Yeah.
Yeah?
I've been working hard trying to, finish up my book and get it out there. So.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of our creative writers, a lot of our artists or whatever, and the past few months, this downtime, they've been using to be creative.
Yeah.
Really, to be behind the keyboard or at the easel or creating something.
Yeah.
So give us the book blurb, man. Tell us a little bit about The Truth.
I retired about a year ago after 41 years as a journalist. And my last gig was as editor of Florida Today, which is the newspaper here in Melbourne, and retired here. And with everything that's been going on with journalism and attacks on the media, I went through and I put together what started off was going to be just my memoirs about some of my favorite stories that I've told. And it kind of has evolved around since then to a defense of the First Amendment and a defense of local journalism.
And probably it's a critical time in journalism right now where we're at. I had the good fortune I did my internship at Florida Today when I was studying journalism at what was then BCC, before it was Eastern Florida. When I did my degree, I did my internship at Florida Today, and then I was blessed to get my first job in the weeklies. And then
that's how I started off too, in weeklies.
Yep, and then I got a job with Hometown News and there. So, but it's just amazing. When I came out of school and when I was doing my internship, there was a level of understanding for what we did in the newsroom.
Right.
Today, it seems like if we don't regurgitate your opinion back to you, we're automatically lying.
That's right.
And I try to tell people all the time, there's no such thing as fake news. There is news. It's the facts. Who, what, when, where. And then I try to leave the why for all those people who are going to be quoted in the story.
Right.
They can worry about that.
That's true. And, I feel the same way. And I point out to people that there's always been bias in reporting. There has to be.
A storyteller can't tell a good story, right? Unless they have a little of themselves.
Right.
That spills into it.
And it's impossible to separate yourself and the filters that you bring. So acknowledge them. Be fair. Be accurate, but acknowledge that we're not perfect and that we will apply our own filters to what we see.
How did you work when you were in the newsroom? How did you deal with your own sense of biases or those of your reporters as you got older
That's why I felt that it was always important to have great diversity in the room, not just the obvious diversity of race and gender, but points of view, so that there could be a discussion that would come from all different points of view when we were deciding coverage. Just a quick story. I was very involved with international journalists and hosted a Turk and an Armenian. And if you know any of the history of those two countries,
this is not a fun room to be in.
Right. Right. And I hosted them at my house, and they worked on a project together. And then we went to Turkey and to Armenia to present the results of their work. neither one of them had ever shared their perspective to each other, but they could not agree on the end result. And it was because they had not had that diversity of discussion, that has to occur for journalism to be real.
Yeah, and the thing is I once I met a young journalist, and they were very passionate about journalism and writing, and they were also very passionate about the power of the news to affect change in the community. And I remember part of the discussion, I remember telling him, as the old guy in the room, right? I remember telling him, well, here's the thing, yes, it's an amazing power to affect change, so long as the change that you're affecting is that which your readers want to affect, not what you want to affect.
Correct.
I used to take great pride in if a person of, say, the opposite political party would call my editor and complain about my bias, and they, and they would say, that guy is such, he's so far on the other side, and I could giggle to myself and say, you didn't know that I'm on your same side.
You're right.
And that means I did my job. I told the story that was out there, regardless of how it made me feel.
Yeah, and I'm originally, not originally, but I grew up in Connecticut, and I went to a meeting of the Connecticut Club here, and a woman said to me, "Now, honey, you could go sit with that couple over there. They're Democrats." And I looked at her and I said, all my life I've voted Republican, and I'm fairly conservative in my approach to things. I've never voted for a Democrat for president in my life. Why would you think automatically that I'm a Democrat and would want to sit with the Democrats? And she looked at me and she said, "Well, you're editor of the newspaper. I thought you had to be." and I said, "Well, they make an exception to that rule for the editor."
just for, but if you have like seating talent, you can still you can stay regardless of your voter ID. It's an amazing thing, and honestly, I think from academia and in the media, I think we do have a certain center, or at least even if we're conservatives, left to center.
No question.
Because the First Amendment and our right to free press and those liberties are so very vital to our careers, let alone our personal interests, that it leans you that way. But at the same time, when an issue comes up, I think the idea that you can look at things from a conservative perspective and a news perspective, and even have other voices in the room, it makes the story better, richer, and more more representative of the reader that you're targeting. So
absolutely,
that's amazing. Now, what made you decide that you wanted to write all that down and tell your story?
I think it was the fact that I had a stroke in 2018, and that kind of forced me to retire. But I didn't want to give up the journalism. I missed it, and so I started writing. And I didn't know where it was going to end up, and I ended up telling some of my favorite stories from, going back and doing research and on because your memory is not. I found quickly that my memory was not very accurate, so I had to do a lot of research on what I had actually written, and so that's kind of.
I love that you just made that comparison, and I'm going to throw it out there for our audience to because I think that's an amazing thing. You said you found very quickly that your memory of things wasn't that accurate, and isn't that? And I'm going to frame this as a question for you. Isn't that why we exist as the journalists? Because over time, living memory will fade and change with our experiences, but there will always be that story. It'll always be there in print or on film or wherever. There'll always be that story as it was in that day.
Absolutely. And I think the founders understood that. I think that they understood that and more, Thomas Jefferson, great defender of the Constitution and the First Amendment, he was angry at the press during his presidency for how they treated him, but he respected and treated them, with a degree of kindness, and he understood the role of the media. And I think that's what's being lost today, is that we've forgotten the role of the media.
A healthy respect for antagonism. There's
Right.
something to be said. We're supposed to have an antagonistic relationship with our subjects on some level.
Right.
Because no one wants to answer tough questions about themselves or their beliefs or their policies. No one wants to answer those questions, but someone has to put the answer on the record for posterity. That's you, and I hope I do that in the arts in some way still. That's why I took this chair, because I said, you know what, I miss my days in the newsroom. But you know, my kids were in their teens, and I didn't want to do the midnight
Right.
runs for perp walks. And I said, no, I have to be home. I have to find a way to be a journalist, though. I have to. And I said, I can do entertainment. I can do the show.
Yeah.
And they, you know, the internet's amazing for that, by the way. These young kids coming out, I know there are kids coming out of journalism school, and they jump right into their own blog or their own, you know, thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see the opportunities that are out there. I just hope that we can get the message from things like, you know, your book, you know, The Truth, out there to these kids. If you're going to write a blog, if you're going to start your own thing, have integrity for the process.
Right.
Because if you're doing it for the numbers and you're just spewing people's own opinions back at them, you're doing a disservice to the entirety of a field that has its roots in the old scribes following tribes from town
Right.
to town.
Absolutely. And you know, it's the demand for it is off the charts for good, truthful storytelling. The Truth should be published the first week of August, but I've already been getting inquiries about, you know, will you write about this? You know, you covered this, would you write about it?
That's awesome.
So I have, you know, a second one that I'm already working on, and the first one isn't even published yet.
That's a great way to be a writer, by the way, is to have your next idea all lined up when you get done. That, my friend, is the shut up card. That means that we've been just chatting away here. I want to thank you very much for coming and hanging out with us today. I also want to thank our partners and our friends at Famous Faces and Funnies, J. Bauer Art for all the art that you see on the set today, our great friends at Space Coast Comics, Hearts Helping Others of Central Florida over in Orlando. That's families helping other families right here in Central Florida get through hard times. And right now, we just finished up the COVID-19, I guess you'd call it social distancing practices, and we're trying to figure out where we fit in now. Open, half open, not open. We're sitting this far away. Normally, we like to shake hands on the set, but yeah, I don't know him. I do now, though. It's great. We want to thank our friends at Brevard Film and Talent for making me somewhat of a filmmaker, even though I'm a print journalist, so this was new to me. I want to thank Mommy and G Creations, my great daughter Kim, and my granddaughter baby G, who are making all of our merchandise for us. NSC Live TV, and of course, I want to thank all of you for watching the show. Hit subscribe, get notified when we have new interviews. We've got authors, artists, filmmakers, musicians, creative minds of all kinds. And we've been hanging out for the last couple of minutes with Robert Gabordi, the author of The Truth, coming to a bookstore, a tabling event. Online, you can probably get it. We're going to drop links down below as soon as we have them when Robert's book is out. Check out The Truth, guys. Journalism is an important part of our history today, and it is an important part of making sure that history remembers today, tomorrow. You guys will figure all that out. There's a lot of word stuff happening there. We'll see you later, guys. In the meantime, stay tuned in, stay logged on, and see who we're hanging with next. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. That's awesome.